Hello everyone. I'm fighting with a little bit of an issue right now that I finally decided to bring to YouTube. I can't seem to find the answer to this anywhere on the internet, so I guess this would be the best place to turn. I have before me a broken Sega CD Model 2. This is the one I've had since I was a small child, and, you know, a lot of nostalgia sparing the sob story. Essentially, I had the same problem that most people do, which is the blown power fuse. So, I decided to make sure that was indeed the problem, I would jump the fuse here. So I did that by simply wrapping a copper wire around it. And the very first time I tried turning it on, that worked. Momentarily. I plugged it in, and after it was on for just a short time, I watched it dance around on the screen, and then it shut off. So I was poking around with a voltmeter, and quite frankly, nothing in this board will give me any sort of reading except for the actual jack itself, which gives the standard input for a Sega Genesis Model 1 adapter, which is what I'm using. Okay, correction, it only gives a power reading when the power when the power strip is turned on. So yeah, the power jack is the only thing that's supplying any power in the entire board. I've tested most of the connections, most of the fuses, nothing. I'm actually going to unplug this for my own safety. Sorry about that. So, since the fuse is not the problem, I did some research as to what would be next in line for faulty wiring on Sega's part, or on my part if I happen to blow something up. And since there's really not a lot of info on these on the internet, even though they've been around for such a long time, it took me a while to find it. But what I ultimately found was that it would probably be the power regulator, if my camera would ever focus on it. It's not the standard power regulator from Sega, however. The one that Sega uses in most of their consoles are labeled O, I, and C for output, input, and common. However, if I can ever get my camera to focus, which it doesn't seem like I'm going to be able to, it's labeled with E and B. So I'm assuming the center one would still be ground, and I really don't know what the other two are, but theoretically if it was working, I would actually be able to get voltages if I was to touch the negative lead to the center one and the positive lead to either of the others. That doesn't happen. So I'm beginning to suspect that this right here, the power regulator, is indeed the problem. However, it's not the standard 7505 model that most of their consoles use, as I just said, and I don't know what model of power regulator it is. So this is where you guys come in. I need help figuring out the part number for this, and honestly, I'm not even entirely sure that's the problem. All I know is nothing else on the board gives voltage, and when I do plug it in and try and turn it on with the Genesis attached, the LED will flicker for just the briefest of moments, and then nothing else responds ever again. So any help or advice would be really appreciated, but for now I'm just going to end up packing this thing away, I think. Project for another day, I suppose. Something interesting I noticed is that almost all of the metal inside of my Sega CD is covered in fingerprints and smudges and smears, or just other forms of residue. But the really funny thing is, this is pretty much the first time I've opened this up, and I have never ever touched the backplate, and it's got little fingerprint smears all over the place. So, I'm guessing these probably came straight from Sega themselves.